Having to take out a loan to buy a new TV or buy the latest Chanel bag is not a good idea. The number one thing that schools don't teach us, but probably should, stress management. How to manage those micro and macro stresses that we go through on a daily basis, perhaps as a result of our families, our work, personal lives, projects, our careers. Life's greatest battles are fought within the silent chambers of the mind. Life is chaotic and things won't always go according to plan. We might get fired from a job, we might lose loved ones, we might have friends leave us, we might be heartbroken from a relationship. Things don't always go according to plan. But if we let the negative thoughts and experiences we go through in life take over, it can be that hurdle, that stumbling block that keeps us from moving forward. So we do need tools to deal with stress. So here are some tools we can use to combat those negative thoughts and deal with stress. Number one, recognize that we can't always control the things that happen to us, but we can control our responses to them. And in that response lies our growth and that freedom of mind that we desperately seek. Number two, journal your thoughts. Sometimes I find that when I'm faced with a very stressful or difficult situation, taking a step back and actually writing out how I'm feeling, what my thoughts are on paper, takes away the power of that stressful situation. It literally feels like I am offloading those negative thoughts and fears when I journal. Number three is taking a walk. I find that sometimes just going out, getting some fresh air and clearing my head really is a perfect cure to stress because we are temporarily distracted from that thing or that situation that's causing stress. Number four, I am learning to not take myself seriously, and this is a hard one. On one hand, society says, be yourself, the world will love you for it. On the other hand, we're taught in our academic and professional lives or careers to be a certain way, to fit into a certain mold. And so we find ourselves and our minds racing between the two. Well, which should we be? But I'm learning that not taking myself seriously really helps me get out of my head, getting over fears and just doing the things I've always wanted to do. The second thing that school does not teach us, but probably should, how to fail. More importantly, how to fail well, but recover even better. Show me someone who's never failed at anything in life, and I'll show you someone who's not being real with themselves or you. But I can't really fault that individual because admitting to failure is pretty difficult. Getting an F at school is demonized. And I'm not saying that getting an F should be celebrated and praised, but I think the right response would be to teach young children how to deal with the fact that they've gotten an F, but more importantly, how to recover from that emotionally and academically. And the truth is, a lot of us who have spent quite a bit of time in the academic system, we tend to avoid things with a higher probability of failure. New businesses, new environments, because they completely terrify us. But we need to rewire our brains to realize that failure is actually a good thing. Without failing, there are certain things in life that we just cannot learn. Failure can actually act as an impetus to get us to where we need to be. The third thing that school doesn't teach us, but probably should, is how to deal with uncertainty. Let me ask you, is there a situation right now that terrifies you? Why are you so terrified about that situation? My guess is that you will say something similar or along the lines of, I'm terrified because I don't know what the outcome is going to be. But the truth is that in most situations, no matter how much we try to frame things and we have this overconfidence in the future, we cannot be certain things are always going to play out that way. The job market might look really great today, but tomorrow companies are closing their doors. Many companies in the past were at the pinnacle of their industries, whether that's in retail, IT, banking, and they're no longer there today. You might be in a great and loving relationship one day and the next day things fall apart. So who knows what the future will bring? One way to mitigate that is to become very comfortable with the uncertainty of life. Here are a few ways that I like to deal with uncertainty. The first thing I always ask myself when I have a situation that terrifies me completely because I can't predict the outcome is, what is the worst that could happen? If that situation is not life-threatening, what is the worst that could happen? And when I go through this exercise mentally, I oftentimes say to myself, well, what are you worried about? What scares you so much? Just start, take it one day at a time and deal with the situation at hand. Number two is to accept that we don't have all the answers. No matter what the headlines tell us, not even the smartest of individuals can tell you what's going to happen in the next hour or two, let alone tomorrow or the week after. They can take guesses at best, but they can't tell you with 100% certainty. The fourth thing that schools should teach us but don't: how to rest. To push ourselves constantly to a point of failure can be a good thing in terms of igniting change that we need to propel ourselves after that. But doing it all the time is not only mentally and physically unsustainable, it's also not very wise. When I was younger, I could focus so easily for 10 hours straight. Believe me, I did it. I was always in the library at school, and I guess it paid off. But the older I got, the more I realized that that may have been a hack that worked once upon a time, but it's not sustainable. Science actually tells us that our effectiveness diminishes after a few hours. We live in a world that celebrates work, activity, productivity all the time, 24/7, and ignores renewal and recovery, and fails to acknowledge that both of these are necessary for sustained high performance. The fifth thing that schools don't teach us: effective time management. Now, I have to say, there is an attempt to some degree to instill a sense of time management in young children. That's why the day is broken up into sessions. That's why you are given assessments and tests and essays to hand in within deadlines. But I think we could do a lot more in terms of instilling effective time management skills into younger children that then go on to have great time management skills. And it's really not about having the latest productivity tools. We're constantly pushed these productivity tools. It's not about waking up at 5 a.m. It's not about building this incredibly crazy schedule that you can't even keep up with. I believe it is simply about making progress in the things that matter the most to us. So I like to do things quite old school. I keep a physical to-do list on a daily basis. And I noticed over the past few weeks, there were tasks that I had to do that seemed pretty daunting. And that was because I hadn't allocated time to each of those tasks. So I would just write down a list of things I had to do. I hadn't necessarily prioritized things, but when I started to map out each activity and allocate time to it, the things that scared me became a little less scary. And I realized that time management isn't about doing everything. It's about prioritizing and getting the most important things done. The sixth thing that schools don't teach us but should: money management. Now, this is one that is very close to my heart, as you may have guessed, because I speak about it all the time. I didn't learn about mortgages, investing, credit cards, interest rates, compounding interest, all of those things until well into my early 20s. And this was only after making a ton of mistakes that could have been avoided if I just had the basic education about good money management. When I opened my first bank account, my banker at the time said to me, if you can do without getting a credit card, do so. And frankly, I've actually never owned a credit card. This doesn't mean that credit cards are necessarily bad, but you must manage how you use them so they don't become a thorn in your flesh. Make sure you are paying off those balances on time so that the interest don't start stacking up. Number two is how to manage debt. The minute you get out of school, depending on how you funded your education, that is a point that a lot of us start encountering and racking up debts in our lives. Car loans, home loans, business loans, personal loans, you name it. You definitely want to understand the basics of interest rates: fixed interest rates, variable interest rates, promotional interest rates, retained interest, stepped up interest. And the calculations you need to do on these are not college level calculus. But it really isn't enough to just learn those basic money skills. You have to convert those skills into making wealth and securing your financial future. Which leads into the seventh thing that school doesn't teach us: how to build wealth. Now, learning how to build wealth really isn't as difficult as the world makes it seem. And I learned it in my 20s and into my 30s. And if I can do it, you can. I'm still on that journey. I'm still learning as I go along. But as I've seen the benefits of putting into practice what I've learned, that really is what pushes me to keep going a lot of times. Let me share with you 2 wealth building principles. Number 1, avoid debt. Build a natural aversion to debt. Now, I know we talked about debt management. The reality is that for a lot of us, we will have some level of debt. Now, there is good debt and there is bad debt. Good debt is debt which actually helps you achieve more wealth. And bad debt is pretty much what does nothing for you. Consumption debt is bad debt. Having to take out a loan to buy a new TV or buy the latest Chanel bag is not a good idea. Now, debt can be a wealth destroyer because those interests need to get paid. And if you don't manage it properly, it just accumulates and accumulates and causes you a lot of stress and financial anxiety. It is hard to completely avoid debt. For example, if you need to buy a house, you most likely would need to take out a mortgage. But if you live your life being super comfortable with debt, it is pretty difficult to build sustainable wealth. Number 2, learn to spend less than you earn, especially if you've maintained low overheads. This is one of your greatest weapons to building wealth. And ride out those uncertainties of life. For example, if you lose your job, it won't be too much of an issue because you've got savings and investments that can really help you ride that wave until you find a new job. Number 8 is how to communicate effectively. I dare say that a lot of the challenges we face in relationships today and our engagements, interactions with different people or different groups of people can sometimes come down to effective communication. Someone says one thing, the second person takes it the wrong way. Somewhere there is a break in communication. Now, granted, school does teach us the basics of language and communication, but I think a lot more could be done in terms of teaching children and teaching us how to be more focused, how to listen and respond effectively. Number 9, you won't always get what you deserve. I know, life is hard. Life is unfair. For those who are in the workforce, for how many years have you gone through that grind? You've given it your all. You've hit those figures and you've exceeded them. And you were perhaps promised an increase in salary or a promotion. At the end of the year, your boss sits you down and says, I know you've done a great job. We're just not in a position to give you what we promised. Don't let that knock you down in life. Take that energy, put it into something else and keep going. The 10th thing that schools teach us, but they don't really do a good job at, is how to manage our health. 69% of American adults are overweight. 36% are obese. And this isn't just a US problem anymore. Global data shows that 10% of men and just about 14% of women are obese worldwide. And that's nearly double the rate of obesity compared to the 1980s. And the likelihood is that a lot of us did not learn about nutrition and how to make our meals perhaps healthier. And now that I'm older, I try to prioritize good sleep, I drink a lot of water, and I'm trying to get rid of processed foods from my diet and eat more fruits and vegetables. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.